Hello everybody, Ryker Richard here, breaking down the latest news surrounding what's increasingly looking like Montrezl Harrell, aka the modern day Dennis Rodman.
Like, what do you take away from him?
Oh, I've been telling people I'm the modern day Rodman. For real, I'm the modern day Rodman, that's it.
Modern day Dennis Rodman is going to be suiting up the next NBA season as a Toronto Raptor. Here's the current timeline, what we're sort of looking at, the reason we're breaking this all down. First, the Clippers, they were eliminated in the Western Conference semis versus the Nuggets in spectacular, disappointing fashion for the Clippers franchise, obviously, in Game 7 on September 15th. 2 days later, September 17th, or it could have been September 16th, one or 2 days later, after reports of a huge argument between Montrezl Harrell and Pandemic P, PG-13, Paul George, Montrezl Harrell begins following the Toronto Raptors on Instagram, leading to Ben and I's first speculation video about what this could mean. And then now, not 2 weeks later, October 1st, Montrezl Harrell's AAU Team logo is looking like the old Toronto Raptors claw. It's looking pretty fresh. And the team name is literally the Team Trezz Raptors. So before we get into it, I'm going to say thanks again for the 15K subs. It's been a whirlwind this past month with all of the Raptors content. So it's really super cool that all these new people are finding their way to this Raptors Digest channel that's been kicking around for a while, and especially how lively the comment section is getting for these vids. So shout out to all of our OG Raptors Digesters, and if you're a rookie to the channel, definitely subscribe. We on that road to 20K now, but let's get into the real meat of things. And the real premise of this news is that Harrell's followed the Raptors Instagram. He's entering free agency 2020. He's named his AAU team the Toronto Raptors, and speculation is now starting to get a little more substantial on whether or not, can't really speculate whether or not the Raptors are legitimately entering conversations with Montrezl Harrell yet, but it does seem like him or his camp is starting to get the attention of the Toronto Raptors. He's starting to shop other teams, it would appear, from some of the things going on. Now, in my digging, it seems like this logo was already printed on their team content before March 20th even, so well before, I guess, this news is really being seen by the Raptors fandom. So it doesn't seem to be a spur-of-the-moment decision since their playoff loss. However, that's not to say that, I guess, Montrezl Harrell hasn't been eyeing Toronto as a possible destination. Obviously, he knows, or he knew throughout the season, that he's going to be an upcoming free agent, so that's typically when guys start to play better, and this could have been a place that he's been looking at. So we'll break it down. Obviously, free agency is a two-way street. The Raptors, they'd have to be interested enough to sign Harrell, and considering that, I guess they'd need to like his potential as a player. They'd need to factor in his market price and the length of the contract. I'd be interested, or I'd be comfortable at least paying him a 1-year contract for any amount, really, but I'm looking seriously at needing to keep that cap space around for 2021 and potentially landing Giannis. And of course, on the other side, Montrezl Harrell would also need to accept a Raptors offer, as he is the reigning Sixth Man of the Year. He's obviously going to be expecting somewhat of a payday since he's only been making, I say only, but he's only been making, relative to good NBA players, $6 million a year for the past 2 years, I believe. So I'd expect him to be in the double digits, probably pushing $15 million, if not more, dollars per year. But what we can see is that Montrezl Harrell, whether or not something's going to happen of this, what we can see is that Montrezl Harrell is thirsting hard for the Toronto Raptors. He's trying to get their attention with all these little subtle moves that he's been making over the past 2 weeks. And now it seems like him or his camp are really trying to engage the Raptors in some free agency discussions. And we're going to revisit the Harrell, a.k.a. the modern Rodman. The modern Dennis Rodman. I mean, there's obviously not a lot of legitimacy to that claim, but we're going to revisit that whole debate around him potentially coming in as a Toronto Raptor. So there's more legitimacy now to having this debate, I would say, now that news is starting to break about Marc Gasol's potential move to Spain to play for Barcelona, however you say it correctly. We just had a video breaking down all that information, so if you're interested about hearing about Big Spain, i.e. Big Burrito's departure from the Toronto Raptors and maybe over to the EuroLeague. Definitely check out that video. But the Raptors, one way or another, they're finding themselves needing to fill that backup center position. And again, I'm going to assume that the Raptors will do what it takes to keep Serge Ibaka around, and that they're going to subsequently slide him up into the starting center position for the upcoming season. Maybe that's a hot take. We broke down again his video and check that one out too, surrounding the news that he might potentially go to a place like Charlotte, or that there's going to be some other offers that come in the plus $20 million range, plus 22, plus $25 million range. We thought that might be getting a little bit rich, but Ben and I both agreed, and it seemed like the comments of that video agreed that if it's a reasonable enough price, we're going to extend Serge Ibaka. We want to keep him as that center, especially with what he was able to achieve, having his best year of his career for the Toronto Raptors. So assuming those things, we're looking to fill in that backup C, that backup 5 position, and having a void in that space. This is what I want to hear in the comment section is we have a couple options. And what would you prefer? Let Boucher become the backup center and unleash Trey Boucher. Mr. Montreal, bonjour. That's option 1. And just save cap space, look into guards, look into whatever, just, not even need to go right up to the maximum amount that you're paying everybody on your payroll. Option 2, get really wild, put all your chips in Duan Hernandez to become a legitimate stretch big. That was some comments that I saw in the last Marc Gasol video that we were not even bringing up his name. There was some pushback on that. Option 3, get really super wild, make OG the full-time secondary center when he's not playing with Boucher or Serge Ibaka out there. If he was, he'd be the 3 or the 4. But when those guys aren't out on the court, have him as the center and run small ball for long stretches of games during the regular season. Option 4, sign Harrell. And option 5, sign someone else. And that's kind of where I'm leaning. But I'll let you guys think about that for a second. I just want to take a moment to also say why I'm going solo. Any diehard fan of the channel, they probably know that Ben is headquartered, I guess you could say. He spends most of his time in Montreal. He's a McGiller, and the way that things have been going with the shutdowns there, he's trying to get the heck out and get back to the East Coast, Newfoundland, where I think there's 0 active cases or something crazy like that. So he'll be back on the pods coming Sunday, when we'll also hopefully be debuting our first live video podcast. So we'll incorporate our faces, all that good stuff. I know people have been asking about that for a long time. But back to the Harrell debate. Ben and I, we already made a full breakdown. I said that of the video highlighting our opinions on the prospect of bringing in Montrezl Harrell as a backup. And we basically came to the conclusion that at, I think he's about 18, 19 points per game, 8 rebounds, 1 block. I think he has about a steal per game or 2 assists, shooting 58% from the field. That this guy, he would not be a net negative if you brought him around as an undersized backup center. So I guess there's a lot of caveats. However, he shoots virtually 0 threes per game. He's not going to come in and all of a sudden be able to shoot, I wouldn't say. And he would definitely be a liability in playoff time. The same way that Rondae Hollis-Jefferson would be a liability. The same way that Russell Westbrook, for whatever reason, as a point guard, can't shoot the threes, but was a huge liability in that Lakers series, and ultimately was one of the big reasons that they lost that. So that's one of the big howevers. And then also, he'd be looking, as I already said, for a big payday. I mean, he's reigning 6th man of the year. He deserves that. I don't think anybody would disagree that he deserves deserves to get paid. So with all that considered, I'd personally pay him. Again, this is maybe my hot take, but I'd personally pay him $15 million if that's what he said. If I want 15, I want 18, whatever. I'd pay him that money to have him as the backup center, knowing that and swallowing that come playoff time, you're probably going to sit him down. But he's going to win you, just in his energy alone, he's going to win you a couple of games, probably a good amount of games during the regular season. He'd be that kind of guy that would polarize the bench unit, keep everybody sort of engaged and keep that defensive intensity up, keep that fast break that the Raptors love to play in that high-octane offense. I think that there's good things that he could bring throughout the regular season, but on a 1-year deal. And to me, there's no way I'd offer him anything more than a 1 year. That's not where the Raptors are headed. They need players that can play D and shoot threes. And if you don't fit into that mold and you're trying to save money for Giannis, there's no way I'd keep him on. And I just don't see any way that Montrezl Harrell would accept a 1 year deal in what's probably the prime of his career now. I think most of the NBA is going towards that small ball, all 5 players need to shoot threes style lineups. And so if you're not able to do that, you're kind of slowly getting worse, I would say, over your career. Maybe that's also a hot take, but I'd give him a 1 year. I don't think he would accept that. Therefore, I'm looking at who else could the Raptors bring in on a cheap deal to preserve as much cap space as possible. Also, I do want to mention too, people really took issue with his personality in the comment section of our last videos. I guess that was to be expected. We mentioned it a little bit, but I'll throw some of the comments up on the screen. I'm looking at them here now, and it was pretty polarizing. Like some said he would destroy the Raptors' chemistry. You're like, this is impossible. This would be the worst deal ever. Don't sign this guy. Others said this is the perfect place for a guy like him, where the Raptors have traditionally been able to calm some of the bigger egos that have come through the franchise, through the organization as Raptors players. I think it was a good point, but that seemed to be what people were focusing on the most. I would tend to say that, with the way that this team is structured and the coaching that they have and the personalities that they have already on the team, that you'd kind of be forced to fit into that immediately, sort of entering this. But I'm not going to get into that too much, because I still stand by my stance that the Raptors should be looking to sign a big man that fits better with the Raptors style of offense, which is, again, mainly be able to shoot threes and be able to play defense and be relatively cheap. And there's guys on the entering free agency at the center position or at the 4 or 5 position that I think could do that more handily than bringing a guy like Montrezl Harrell, who'd be pretty expensive that you'd have to sign on a longer term deal. There's expensive guys hitting the market that can't really do that. Whiteside, Drummond, Bismack Biyombo, who probably shouldn't be at that $17 million range anymore, but I don't think he can shoot the three still. Who else? Thompson, of Cleveland Cavaliers. Good Canadian guy. People have been saying, some people have said we should bring him in. They've been throwing that out for the last couple of years. I don't think there's a real fit, even though he's a tremendous offensive rebounder. Myers Leonard, now we're getting cheaper, that sub $10 million range. Myers Leonard, he'd be fine, I guess. Nerlens Noel, probably around the same thing. Cauley Stein, I think he's a player option. Just trying to go through all there's a ton of centers actually hitting, but the most promising one, we brought him up last podcast. Some people said you guys are tripping. Some people said they'd agree with us. I'm liking the looks of Aaron Baines. He currently had the $5 million contract at Phoenix, and you'd probably get him for around the same. He was very serviceable as a Boston Celtic. He did some good things, decent defense, decent rebounding, was able to actually shoot the three at a pretty high clip. I think it was over 35%, maybe about 38%. You'd have to fact check me on that. But he's the guy that good attitude, and I think he'd be really great at 15, 20 minutes per game coming off the bench as a serviceable backup center that you could limit or give more minutes to in the playoffs as necessary. So that's basically this podcast is. I'm saying, as much of the rumors and as much as we hear about Montrezl Harrell in, preaching, I guess, towards the Toronto Raptors, I think this whole two-way street thing, he might want to come. I don't see why the Raptors would particularly want this guy unless he's on a reasonable contract for a short-term period, because he could definitely win games during the regular season. No doubt about that in my mind. He could definitely contribute to wins during the regular season, but come playoff time, you can't have a guy out there posted up in the corner or posted up on the wing that defense can sag off and just slump right back into the key. We saw how much guys like Fred VanVleet struggle when tall guys crowd them. He finds it very hard to hit layups. Pascal Siakam, too, was getting really flustered whenever he was trying to get his inside shots. Even the little baby hooks weren't going in. So the Raptors, they need all the spacing help that they can get, and if you're not a shooter, there's just there's no two ways around it. They're not going to play come playoff time. So let me know what you guys think. Is it worthwhile? It seems. Let me say it this way. It seems like Montrezl Harrell is wanting to buy into the Raptors organization, but the question is, are the Raptors wanting to buy into Montrezl Harrell? So let me know what you guys are thinking in the comment section below. And it isn't usually me that signs off on these podcasts, so bear with me as I do my best Ben Rogers impression. You guys are oh shoot. All right, try again. You guys are the best for making this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, and all that cool stuff. We got a lot of content coming up this offseason. Things are going to get pretty wild. They are getting wild. They're already crazy, and we got a ton of stuff to break down. So definitely hit subscribe if you want to stay up to date on all the Raptors offseason moves, rumors, speculation, all that good stuff. He normally says, Ryker, you got any last words? Then I pause for a second, try to think of something cool to say, and I almost always never do. So I'll hit you with this. That's it for me, guys. Cheers.